The U.S. military's operation to capture Venezuela's Nicolás Maduro has sent a direct message to allies as well as adversaries alike. And in places like Cuba, seismic ripple effects seem imminent. That's because Venezuela has been a critical partner to Cuba for decades. They've long been united against what they see as U.S. imperialism, and Venezuela has provided them oil and energy, while Cuba has provided skilled labor, doctors, things like security. But here's how the president of the United States sees that relationship now.
Cuba is ready to fall. You know? Yes. Cuba looks like it's ready to fall. I don't know how they're going to go. But Cuba now has no income. They got all of their income from Venezuela, from the Venezuelan oil. They're not getting any of it. And Cuba literally is ready to fall. And you have a lot of great Cuban Americans that are going to be very happy about this.
Yeah, and one notable Cuban American is Secretary of State / National Security Advisor / point person on Venezuela, Marco Rubio. Rubio's parents came to Florida from Cuba a few years before Castro's communist revolution. And even as a U.S. senator, Rubio has long been one of the loudest voices pushing for Cuban regime change. So with that history in mind, could we see maybe military intervention there? Here's what the president said about that.
Are you considering U.S. action in Cuba?
I think it's just going to fall. I don't think we need any action. It looks like it's going down. It's going down for the count. You ever watch a fight?
Yeah.
They go down for the count. And Cuba looks like it's going down.
Right now, I want to bring in NBC News reporter Ed Augustin in Havana, Cuba tonight. Ed, good to see you. We've seen some pro-Chavista, like anti-U.S. looking protests forming in Cuba. That's something that we see pretty often there, but what's the mood like in the streets?
Well, it's really interesting, Gadi, because on Saturday, the government convened an emergency rally outside the U.S. Embassy to protest what they describe as state terrorism, what they describe as an abduction of President Nicolás Maduro, Cuba's main ally, and as what they denounce as a criminal act. And I was there reporting, and I was speaking to mainly elder people who came out. Elder people are people that are more likely to support the government here because back in the 60s, 70s, and 80s, they witnessed transformative change. Younger people far, far less to support the government. So elder people came out, about 20,000 of them, and they were on the same page as the Cuban president who addressed the crowd, that this is an abduction, this is terrible, this is an affront, this is, and we're indignant because of this. Then in the afternoon, myself and the camera person, we walked the streets of Havana and we interviewed normal people. And what was amazing is that at a time where the Cuban government is very unpopular with regular people, because it's presided over the last 5 years over a terrible crisis, a humanitarian crisis, energy crisis, medicine crisis, food crisis, you name it, a poly crisis. Strangely, the average person on the street agreed with the Cuban president. I didn't find a single person that supported the capture of Nicolás Maduro. Everyone I spoke to, young, old, black, white, rich, poor, said that they were against it. And everyone made the link between when asked, between Venezuelan oil stopping getting to Cuba and the lower living standards for themselves and their neighbors. Everyone in Cuba knows that the government is not going to be hit in terms of their own living standards. They live far better than most people, as all governments do, to a greater or lesser extent. It's going to be the poor, it's going to be the vulnerable, it's going to be the elderly, it's going to be darker colored people in terms of skin that are going to bear the brunt of what happens if, and we'll see what happens, if President Trump and Secretary of State Marco Rubio manage to coerce the new Venezuelan government to stop sending highly subsidized oil to Cuba. So it was really quite something to see.
And we're still trying to figure out the exact number of people that were killed in this U.S. incursion into Venezuela, but notably, Cuba. Cuba is saying that 32 Cuban officers were killed in the strikes, right? And the U.S. has said that Maduro was being guarded by Cuban bodyguards. Why would that be?
We've been reporting on this, and I've had a couple of interesting conversations today with people that know at least one of the people that was protecting erstwhile former Venezuelan President Nicolás Maduro. And this is something that the US government and the Cuban government agree on, it's very rare, that yes, Cuban people, dozens of them, were guiding President Nicolás Maduro, and according to the Cuban government, 32 people have lost their lives. The reason that it happened is simple. There's been a long-standing agreement between Cuba and Venezuela going back to the 2002 coup d'etat against the democratically elected at that point, President of Venezuela, Hugo Chavez. He was temporarily overthrown for a few days in a US-backed coup. And Cuba then approached Venezuela, or Venezuela approached Cuba, I'm not sure who initiated, and agreement was struck. There's an old joke here in Cuba that only two things work these days. One of them is the health service, and the other thing is the intelligence. Not sure if you can say the health service still works, but when I arrived in Cuba 12 years ago, that was the joke. Cuban intelligence is very, very good. That's widely seen by intelligence analysts. And so Cuba were offering support in terms of protecting Nicolás Maduro. And I think the Communist Party here, it's fair to say, are furious that 32 of their members were beaten in combat before President Maduro was, as the US says, captured, as Cuba and Venezuela say, abducted.
So fascinating to hear that the intelligence is up and running when so often even the power there is often not. Ed Augustin out there in Cuba for us. Ed, thank you.
We thank you for watching. And remember, stay updated on breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or watch live on our YouTube channel.